Okay, we'll continue with our last session. Lebih kurang about 20 minutes lagi. Just for discussion. If you have any Q&A, siapa ada Q&A, a bit unique sikit on the third example, because we have a component selain daripada rasuk. Now we have a different component. Usually the first two example is where we can clearly see a beam supporting tangga, a beam supporting staircase. Okay, but in this third example, clearly we are now facing a case where the staircase is now being supported by landing. Okay, so when we have a case yang begini, maka practically we are looking at two different components, dua komponen yang berbeza. When we have one is the staircase component, which is the landing component. This is our landing. Undo dulu, tebalkan sikit. This is my landing component. Okay, I have my landing and I have my beam at both ends of the landing. There are beams located pada kedua-dua hujung sini, okay, of the landing. Now the location of this beam ni is something yang kita verify from the plan view. Okay, daripada plan view tu nampak jelas that there is ada dua beam on either end of the landing. So the landing punya schematic is something yang macam ni, and dia punya idealized structure would be something yang ni lah. This would be kita punya landing punya idealized structure with a support at both ends to represent the beam support. Okay, so the landing is independent, bermakna dia tak bergantung pada yang lain except for the beams, because dia dah ada beams support at both ends, maka the landing is independent. Okay, sama ada if there is a staircase or even if there is no staircase, then it doesn't matter because the landing has its own two support, and the span of the landing is within the center of this beam kepada center of this beam. This would represent the landing and the span for this landing. So this is the landing punya component. Okay, landing has two independent support, therefore the landing can behave sebagai the primary component. It has two supports. Okay, the staircase yang kita tengok pula is something macam ni. Okay, the staircase kita ada the lower landing, kemudian kita ada the incline tak boleh buat macam ni. The incline kena pakai ni. Semua kena pakai macam ni. Okay, this is the lower landing, and then kita ada the incline section, and then kita ada the horizontal section. Okay, we have a beam somewhere di sini, indicating ada support di sini. There is a support sini, somewhere here. There is a support indicating ada beam sini. Okay, and there is a beam juga at this right hand support, but clearly the beam at the right hand support ni is a beam that is not connected kepada staircase. Okay, so the blue is to represent the staircase. So these are the two conditions. Satu landing, satu lagi staircase. Okay, dan the schematic ataupun the idealized structure for the staircase would then be something yang macam ni. Okay, and the span would be sebelah kanan there is no support. We have a support on the left hand side. Okay, sebelah kiri ni ada penyokong, but sebelah kanan there is no support. Okay, so clearly on the right hand side ni bergantung, it has to be dependent kepada something else because the beam is not doing its job di sini. The beam is not connected kepada landing. Therefore, this beam cannot be taken as support to the staircase. So this automatically makes the staircase handicap sikit lah, sebab now we only have satu penyokong. Clearly for the staircase there is only one support on the left hand side. Sebelah kanan there is no support sebab the beam is not connected kepada landing. Compare kepada landing ni, kita ada dua rasuk supporting the landing. So the landing is independent because it has two support. The staircase now becomes dependent, bergantung, terpaksa bergantung kepada landing. It has to depend on the landing to provide support kepada staircase. So now kita ada imaginary support sini, bukanlah imaginary tapi yang merah ni is the support that is coming from the landing itself. This one. Support dia di sini, sama di sini, which is half the distance of 1.5 tu. This is 750. 750. So for this staircase kan ni, for this staircase sebenarnya dia stop sini lah. Sampai situ. Okay. So this is now the condition for the staircase and for the landing. The red line sini ataupun the red support ni sebenarnya is the support provided by the landing. So the landing yang sebenarnya yang provide the red support di sini. So the red support ini is actually coming from the landing. Okay, landing. So now we have a case of landing dengan staircase that has to be separated. Perlu diasingkan because it is now satu utama, satu yang kedua. It has to be separated. Asingkan dua. Okay. This one becomes the main. Okay. Yang ini jadi secondary. Because the secondary is now depending kepada the main. This support ni is actually the main support coming from the main component, which is the landing. To be a main component, it must have dua penyokong, at least. Okay, at least dua penyokong. So yang ini bermakna automatically now the landing becomes the main component, the staircase becomes a secondary component, meaning that the staircase will now be supported by the landing. Okay, itu implication dia lah, implication. In terms of design, we need to separate between the design of landing dengan design of staircase. Dua separate design yang berbeza. A separate design for the staircase, yang mana this represents dia punya schematic ataupun the idealized structure. Okay. This on the right hand side ni represents the idealized structure, and from here we can safely say that the bending moment diagram, the loading ni, that for the staircase is only sampai di sini sahaja. Okay, the loading that has the loading to be considered on the staircase component sehingga at the end of the inclined section sahaja. For the horizontal section, loading di sini dianggap zero. This portion ni yang 750, zero loading. Why? Because semua loading di sini, GK ataupun QK will appear di sini. Will appear here. So this loading ni on the landing sini, ini is the design load N 1.35 GK plus 1.5 QK. Pada landing saja. Sebab tu, that is why this portion of the landing ni, because this is the landing, half the landing ni, 750 ni, this value is 750, okay, 750. So this value of 750 ni, whatever loading acting on 750 ni is actually represented di sini. That is why there is zero loading on the staircase, but 100% loading pada landing. Itu satu. Yang kedua is that perhatikan this particular reaction. We need to evaluate what is this reaction. V dia berapa. Once we obtain what is the value of V, maka then we have another loading acting pada landing, which is the V loading tadi. The reaction coming from the staircase is now transferred kepada landing, because landing, staircase is supporting the landing is supporting the staircase. Landing becomes yang utama, secondary staircase becomes secondary. So to design the main component, the reaction from the secondary has to be taken into account, and that is the reason why this value of reaction di sini, this V value, okay, the reaction coming from the staircase on the right hand side ni, because the right hand side ni is where the landing is located, sebelah kanan sini, okay, is now represented ataupun transferred kepada landing. So on the landing we have two loadings. One is the GK dengan QK of the landing itself, because this N value ni comes from GK dengan QK lah. This comes from 1.35 GK, 1.35 GK plus plus 1.5 QK of the landing. Alright, so we have two different loading kat sini. Satu is the loading coming in from the natural loading of the landing, which is 1.35 GK plus 1.5 QK on the landing itself. Dan satu lagi is the loading coming in from the reaction, because the landing is supporting the staircase. Nah, ini dia punya the direction of the solution tu lah. We have two different things to consider. One is the staircase punya design, satu lagi the landing design. Why this happen is because the landing dengan staircase ni is satu menjadi yang utama, satu menjadi yang secondary. One is primary and one is secondary. Primary has to support, secondary is a component that will depend on the primary. So that is why we have two different components, staircase dengan landing. And design will be separated. And yang ketiga is that loading from the secondary must not be left out pada primary. It has to be transferred. Okay, loading from the primary, loading from the secondary, loading yang ini perlu diambil kira pada pada primary. Okay, so because primary is supporting the secondary. Any question? Kali ni kita masuk 3 session, tapi a very short third session lah. Just to highlight, because example number 3 ni a bit nak hadamkan dia tu, nak menghadamkan dia, will take some extra 20 minutes. Okay, so any question? Ada anyone still not tak clear on how we come up with this variation ataupun with this conclusion for example number 3? What can be done sebenarnya to omit all this problem ni? Apa yang boleh kita buat untuk nak to get away from all this difficult punya decision? What can be done sebenarnya? Anyone? Okay, sebenarnya we can solve everything by moving ni balik ke sini. Why should there be a gap? Tak payah gap lah. Terus letak beam sini. Once we put the beam in connection dengan this staircase, then pertama sekali we don't need this particular beam. Dua ni dah tak perlu. Okay, so we have a saving banyak lah situ. Dah tak perlu these two beams, because this thing ni, benda ni balik seperti example number 2. Example tu exactly sama dengan example 2. All we need to do is just sambungkan antara landing dengan beam tu sebagaimana example number 2. Ialah, so example number 3 ni lebih pada academic sahaja. It doesn't really happen on in real condition, because we have a beam, ada rasuk yang ni, tapi the beam is not connected. Okay, so there's no purpose in providing a beam where the beam is not connected kepada landing. Okay? So it makes better sense to put the beam di sini lah. Okay? So that will solve everything. By putting the beam connected sini, we can omit yang ini, dua ni, and the solution becomes fall back balik kepada solution example number 2. Tapi lebih ke example number 3 ni is just an academic exercise just to highlight pada pelajar that that there are cases where not only beams yang boleh bertindak sebagai penyokong. Okay? In this case, in this particular case, where we have this landing bertindak sebagai penyokong, right? So we are now at 1 o'clock. Okay, dah pukul 1 dah. Ada yang dah tak sabar nak lunch kan? Duduk rumah kan? Jadi duduk rumah tu makanan dah ada atas meja dah tu. Okay, jadi kita stop di sini for today. Any other question? Ada apa soalan yang lain? Saya save dulu ni. Okay. Ada soalan apa-apa? If not, then kita jumpa tomorrow kan? Today is Monday. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday kan? Okay. Jumpa on Wednesday. Pukul 11. Okay? And kita akan tengok dia punya detail solution for example number 3 dan move on kepada example number 4 before kita habiskan topik tangga, and we'll have a discussion on project work on Thursday. Alright? So kalau tak ada apa-apa, kita jumpa on Wednesday 11 AM. Assalamualaikum dan juga have a good day.